Welcome back to Civilnet. I'm your host, Patrick Elliott. I'm actually delighted to be joined by Artyom Geghamyan, the executive chairman of the International Chamber of Mines of Armenia, the ICMA.
Thank you,
Artyom,
Patrick, for having me here.
Thank you. Let's start with the main bear in the room here. A lot of our mines, especially around Yerevan, are known for being extremely pollutant. They're a big contributor to, other than cars, they're the biggest contributor to the poor air quality. They tend to be owned by Russian oligarchs or shady characters. So how do we bring the mining community or industry up for air in Armenia, make it something clean, something that we can be proud of?
Yeah, this is exactly the purpose or part of the purpose of our organization. So we created this organization very recently. In June, we incorporated the organization in June 2023. And the purpose of International Chamber of Mines of Armenia, and for the purposes of this conversation, we will use the shortened version, ICMA. So the purpose of ICMA is to bring Armenia's mining industry into the global market. So first of all, we want to open the Armenian market and our resources to strategic international investors. And thereby, at the same time, we want to have an access to the latest technology in the world. And we have to incorporate and bring into Armenia the best sustainable and responsible mining practices in Armenia. So in this context, most probably you are right that the Armenian mining assets predominantly are owned by investors from one single country. And the absence of diversification per se is something that we have to avoid, especially in an industry which has a strategic importance for our economy.
How do we diversify? Is there any legislation on the books, or is this something that you guys are trying to push? What's the way out of this?
Yeah, first of all, there are several trends globally, and I would like to make a step back and to lay down the context, because if we put the answers or these considerations into perspective, then we have to have a look to a bigger picture, and big picture is that globally we are in the era of critical raw materials now, and energy transition requires tripling, the demand for critical raw materials is going to rise exponentially. So this is a matter of fact, and if we are to pursue, globally, energy transition by 2050, we will have, for example, if we are speaking of copper, which is a metal for electrification, we will have a raise or supply-demand gap up like 2-3 times. So now I think world consumes around 25 million tons of copper per year, and by 2050 we are going to be short for the demand is going to be 50, it is going to double, and by 2030 the world will need 300 more mines to be up and running. Right, so considering that we are in the year 2024, and considering that the span can take up to 10-15 years, starting from the moment when you raise capital, do geological exploration and start operating, so this cycle takes 10 to 15 years. So the world needs 300 more mines for copper, nickel, cobalt, other critical minerals. And in this context, the role of the smaller countries and the jurisdictions that traditionally have not been that attractive for strategic investors. So the role and attractiveness of these countries, and we are speaking of Armenia, of course, it creates a lot of opportunities for our market.
Aren't we a massive copper producer?
We cannot say that we are a massive copper producer, because we don't have any big copper mine in global standards. We have a mine which is a medium-sized mine, which is Kajaran mine. But yes, we are. But look,
our reserves.
Yeah, consider you have to put it into perspective. Consider the size of our economy, our territory, our population. So we can say that Armenia is a mining country, and I believe, and our task, our purpose is to help closely with the government, because you ask, how we are going to, to bring this positive change. This positive change, first of all, we have to realize that we have to be strategic about this. So this is a long-term, commitment. And we have to work with, and actually we have already started as ICMA working closely with the government. And these kind of reforms are being done through policy reforms, legislative reforms, access to technology, and most importantly, education. And ICMA We have well, we will get to this, but just running forward, we have different committees, and one of the most important committees is Committee for Education and Exchange of Experience, and we have already established cooperation with some institutions internationally. These cooperations are in a very, very very early stage, but for example, we have done already some work with Cambridge School of Mines and Mezzo Canada.
That's interesting. I actually do want to touch up on that. I haven't. This is purely suspicion here, but all of a sudden we have more dynamic relations with Canada and the UK, right? And Canada is even, contributing two observers to the EU observation mission. Right. Again, my suspicions, they're protecting their investment. I'm sure there's something. You don't have to answer if you're not allowed to, but tell me, these two countries are mining giants and all of a sudden they're interested in us. Is there some kind of, is there a door opening for cooperation on that front with them?
Yeah, I think I'm permitted, allowed to do anything unless, prohibited by law. But nevertheless, yeah, this is a very good observation, but we have to go deeper. Look, we have to really understand that Canada, Australia, and they are like these big, huge mining hubs, traditional jurisdictions for mining investors. And building stronger relationship with these countries, these jurisdictions, it's only in benefit. Armenia will only benefit from that. And also, we need to really understand what are the policies in these countries, what are the main trends in the mining industry. So, because these powerhouses, they define the trends in the industry for the next 20, 30, 50 years. I don't know. So what's happening in this country? Canada, for example, recently, I think it was in 2022. They released their minerals, Critical Minerals Act, updated that act. EU, on its turn, they released Critical Raw Materials Act in 2023, very recently, in March of this year. And I think, the most important piece of, policy and legislation is the United States Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest provides for, biggest government budgetary support to the mining industry and the green transition, right? So we really need to understand what's happening in these countries, and these recent trends, getting closer to, Canada, or as we like to call them, Western countries, because, in our minds, and in Armenian local minds, and we largely, perceive these countries as like coming Western, although there is huge diversity, culturally, historically, nevertheless, it's not important. But still, and also the second element is that, Armenia is apparently making, in terms of its foreign policy, and why this is relevant to mining industry, because mining industry is geopolitically intensive industry, right? So this is why, if we need to improve our ESG standards, really introduce responsible mining practices in Armenia, we have to learn from these countries. We have to work closely with them, and it also implies, of course, having investors from these countries, from Canada, exchange of students, geologists, all of these things.
Let's touch up on that, actually. So, as you know, right, you have this the most controversial issue in when it comes to the environment in Armenia the last few years is the Amulsar mine, which is actually owned by a Canadian company, as far as I know. So, what is there such a thing as clean mining? Is this possible? How do we assuage because this is obviously, you have to balance the needs of the environment and also the economic output of the country. So what practices can we implement that would put the population at ease to understand that, hey, this is different than the,
Yeah, this is a very good question. But look, we have to realize that there is no energy transition, there is no clean energy, there is no green economy without supply of critical materials, metals, right? And so this is why many leading companies in the world, they consider that metals are going to be basically the new, or are going to be oil of the new era, right? Yeah. So, you can't exclude mining operations entirely, right? So we have a lot of metals just in your devices and everywhere. Yeah. And the rights, so are you driving an electrical vehicle, by the way, or not?
No, I don't drive in Armenia.
My wife does. So in any electrical vehicle, you have like 6 times more critical metals than in conventional, internal combustion engine vehicle. So, and the demand for electric vehicles is going up. So these are the factors that we have to consider. But from the other side, it's very important to really take into account the interests of the local communities. And there is this trend globally that the governments they take more stake in the mining industry, both in terms of regulations, and also taking equity stakes in the mining company and mining companies. So yeah, and the protection and taking into account of the interests of the local population communities is also part of our purpose. And we have this government strategy, Armenian government strategy, which was adopted in May 2023. And there are a number of strategic goals. If we have time, we will touch upon this. But again, local communities' interest is very important. And again, the trend is in the world, apart from the countries that want to secure supply chains for critical materials, at the same time, the host countries for mineral resources, such as Armenia, right? We and the local communities, we want to have our fair share and benefit from the processes and from the benefits that and the values that the market is going to create in future in the minerals industry. Yeah.
But what about like again using Amulsar specifically?
Yeah.
Right, the fear is that toxic chemical is gonna leak into underground water supplies that is going to then go into the crops and farms. How do we prevent that? Is there such a mechanism, or is it something we just have to kind of it comes with the industry?
Yeah, I think to my best knowledge, Amulsar incorporated as far as possible the latest technology in the world. So, but we have to realize that there is no mining activity without any damage to the environment. So the point is to implement or to carry out sustainable mining practices, which means extracting minerals resources now, but at the same time, not depriving the future generations of the same capabilities, the mining resources. So coming back to Amulsar, to my best knowledge, they've incorporated the highest standards. And for the international investors, again, this is coming from my personal experience, because ICMA and our delegation, we have participated in a number of events globally during this year, and Amulsar is a catalyst for Armenian investment environment. So if investors are looking to Armenia, they first of the things they have been they wanted to understand what's happening with Amulsar, and I'm happy to say that most probably next year they will be up and running.
Okay, tell me, you mentioned the government buying shares of these mines, and the example that we have is the Zangezur copper mine. There's still opacity around how this this deal was struck. That the people still don't have an answer to what happened. So isn't there that fear that it opens the back door to corruption, to nepotism, to not the best practices?
Yeah. So I
like the concept.
Yes,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I like that idea. But I would like some transparency.
I'm getting your point, but I think there is something which is more important. So according to our constitution, our subsoil natural resources, they belong exceptionally to state, to the Republic of Armenia, which means, naturally speaking, that Armenians, the citizens of this country, they have to be the primary beneficiaries of our natural resources. And the question is this the case right now? And if we were expecting yes or no answer to this question, rather no than yes, because you look how many Armenian investors or how many Armenian companies or shareholders or UBOs we have in these big mines, right? So this is one of the issues that the government has to consider. And even if the government does this, Armenian government is not going to be alone in the world, because there is this trend of new resource nationalism globally. So this, but again, what we know about the takeover of the equity stakes in the mining companies, first of all, we don't believe that the process is transparent sufficiently. which creates also risks for prospective investors, because the policies, laws, they have to be clear, right? They have to be transparent. But I think the government is getting there. So the most important thing again is that there is this strategy and there is this action plan for the next 10 years, which provides some predictability to the potential investors and stakeholders of the mining industry as to where the government is heading in terms of its policies and laws during the next 10 years, right? And just to bring some examples. For example, the government is going to create a centralized database for a geological database. This is very important. The second thing is improvement of the decision-making process, involvement of the communities, right? And the third thing, as I said, of course, this is a general formulation which probably says nothing, and you would like to be more specific, and we can, of course. But the third thing is that the government is to introduce international best practices and standards in Armenia. JORC reporting standards for the reports to be material. You know, government is going to become member of CRISCO to implement the CRISCO standards in Armenia, and many other things. But generally speaking, again, the good thing is that this strategy is going to be carried out according to UN Sustainable Development Goals. This is very important, and also our SEPA agreement with the European Union that we have.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, I really like the idea of having an Armenian sovereign wealth fund, right, where we can become like the Norwegian one, right, where essentially Norway can cut a check for $240,000 to every single Norwegian citizen. Right. But of course, as you mentioned, right, the process isn't transparent enough, and as long as we're working that direction, that's something that I'm happy to hear. I am still wondering about the currently operating mines that we have. They don't meet international. Let's be real. You don't need to be an expert to realize that they don't meet any international standards. So the real question is, and also these have been kind of signed over in these just atrocious deals where, other than getting stable employment for the local community, which, if I'm from an impoverished village and my dad goes to the mine, there's no argument there. It is a net benefit. But other than that, a lot of the way the resources are, the profits from the mines are distributed, it always flows out of Armenia. How does the government regain control over these mines, or again, are there laws on the books where if they're repeatedly violating environmental standards, that I hate to use that term, but let's, for the sake of argument, the mine can be nationalized and then put on auction for, let's say, a British or Canadian company to come in and manage it properly? Like, what's the mechanism for this?
Yeah, I think it will be very damaging for the country to announce that nationalization policies in the mining industry. And I don't believe, there is a government which considers itself a liberal democracy in the modern world, that. But again, the government's participation and closer regulation and closer scrutiny of the mining industry and mining companies, this is something that we have to do as soon as possible. With respect to the environmental standards, I would agree and would disagree at the same time with you, because I can just bring in one example. For example, Tegut mine, at the time when it was built, it was done in accordance with the highest standards, technologically, environmentally. And as soon as that there wasn't this issue, that the company's management at the time discovered the issue of the dam stability, they immediately shut down the operations as responsible miners, I can say, right? So, and we don't have information what's happening around, are there any works to reinforce the dam or what's happening there? But this is what happened. Yeah, but again, our mines and especially our tailing storage facilities, so these are the sources of concern for environmental risks, and we have to be mindful. And one of the trends globally, which is good news for Armenia, is recycling mining. So we can think about extracting critical materials, rare earths from our tailing storage facilities, and there is already interest from the international investors and the companies that own technology, that have the technology. They are looking towards Armenia, and we will help them and we will welcome them, and we will introduce this diversification naturally, right? So if you go and if we speak about nationalization, I don't think this is the way that you have really govern and manage this complicated, again, geopolitically intensive industry. It has to be long-term strategy. It has to be transparent, because the existing investors, they have to be able to operate in a predictable environment.
Do you think Armenia needs a special ministry for mining?
Oh, well, this is, I'm not a big fan of institutions, especially in the modern era.
You and I both.
Yeah. Yeah, but look, first of all, I would say that we need professionals in the government, and we need really knowledgeable people who have been in this industry, because, I mean, look, the governments change, right? We have elections, the government change, new people come in, and but the specialists and the knowledge and the expertise is we have to be mindful about. So the government needs to really be more inclusive, I would say, in order to attract and hire, work with, consult with specialists in the industry. And then there is, in Armenia, there is this potential, and there is this, we have capabilities. We have good mining companies with good teams, with good geologists. We have good policymakers, and we have these professionals who really understand the industry. And of course, we can also work internationally.
Artyom, what are 3 key goals you want to leave viewers with? What are the 3 main things that you hope that your tenure in the organization will achieve?
Well, let me be more specific. You mentioned about Sovereign Wealth Fund. This was something that we were considering at the time that we have started with our founders. By the way, the founders of our organization are Canadian Armenians and Lebanese Armenians, and they bring their years and wealth of experience. Mm-hmm. And they will be announced tomorrow during our event, which you are also going to attend. So, but what are the main 3 things? So, the main 3 things, again, that the bottom line is that we create policies, laws, practices that ultimately make Armenian people beneficiary of our natural resources, right? So, but this takes a lot of time and energy, and a lot of. And it will take a lot of time. So the second thing is that we want to see Armenian mining companies technologically sophisticated and complying, with and working, in line with the leaders globally in this industry. And the third thing I would say that, again, considering the logic of this industry and how we are going to, and what we, or what's the long-term vision for Armenia's economy, is that we have to find a way to really channel the proceeds that the government can receive through, or this country can receive from its natural resources. We have to find a way to channel to long-term projects such as infrastructure, education, healthcare. So only this way we can really create sustainable, positive change in Armenia. If we are serious, of course, about that. I hope we are.
I don't know. I remain an optimist for this country, and these kind of conversations really help to bolster that opinion that I have. Artyom, thank you so much for hopping on. Thanks again for watching Civilnet. I've been Pat, and we'll speak with you all very soon.